Captain Jinho sat in his command chair aboard the mining vessel Baekdu, watching the stars through the main screen. The ship was not pretty to look at. It was built for work, not show. Thick metal plates covered the hull. Giant mining arms stuck out from the sides like the claws of some metal beast. Inside, everything was practical: gray walls, simple controls, and the constant hum of machinery. Jinho had been captain of mining ships for 15 years. He was a calm man with steady hands and a practical mind. His crew trusted him because he never made promises he could not keep. Today should have been a simple day. They were supposed to mine asteroids in the outer edge of human space, fill their cargo holds with rare metals, and head home to Earth. But things had gone wrong. Navigation Officer Yuna looked up from her control panel with worry in her eyes. She was young but very good at her job. Her fingers moved quickly over the star charts, checking and rechecking her calculations. The numbers did not make sense. "Captain," she said, her voice tight, "we have a problem." "A big problem?" Jinho turned to face her. Around the bridge, other crew members stopped their work to listen. Chief Engineer Do-yoon, a man who could fix anything with enough time and the right tools, looked up from his maintenance. Reports. Security Chief Hana, tough as steel and twice as sharp, moved closer to hear better. "What kind of problem?" Jinho asked. Yuna's hands shook slightly as she pointed to her screen. "The quantum jump we made 6 hours ago. The solar storm that hit us during the jump threw off our calculations. We are not where we are supposed to be." "How far off?" Jinho asked, though he could tell from her face that the answer would not be good. 15,000 light years, sir. We are way outside human space. Way outside any space we have ever mapped." The bridge went quiet, except for the hum of the ship's engines. 15,000 light years meant they were farther from home than any human had ever traveled. It meant they were completely alone in unknown space. Communications Officer Sunho, a cheerful man who could make friends with anyone, tried to lighten the mood. "Well, at least we will have some interesting stories to tell when we get back." Jinho almost smiled. Sunho always tried to find the bright side of things. "Can we jump back?" the captain asked Yuna. "Yes, sir, but it will take time to calculate the right coordinates. Maybe 12 hours, maybe more. The jump drive needs to cool down anyway after that rough jump." "Then we wait," Jinho said. "Everyone back to work. We might as well use the time to check our systems and make sure everything is working right." That was when the alarms started going off. Hana was the first to react, her hands flying over the security controls. "Captain, we have multiple contacts approaching. Big ones. Really big ones." The main screen changed to show space around them. What they saw made everyone stop and stare. Huge structures floated in the darkness. They were not natural asteroids or planets. These were built by someone. Space stations the size of small moons hung in the void, covered in lights and strange symbols. Ships moved between them, ships so large they made the Baekdu look like a toy. "Those ships," Do-yoon said quietly, "they are each bigger than our largest space stations back home." The structures looked like nothing humans had ever built. They were made of dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Strange spikes and curves covered their surfaces. They looked like the bones of some giant creature that had died in space. "Are they hostile?" Jinho asked. Before anyone could answer, the communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke, but it was not human. The words were harsh and guttural like the sound of grinding metal. The universal translator built into the ship's computer worked to make sense of the alien language. "Unknown vessel, you have entered the territory of the Volani Empire. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed. This is your only warning." The crew looked at each other. First contact with alien life was supposed to be a historic moment. Scientists had written thousands of papers about how it might happen, but those papers never mentioned that the first aliens humans met might want to destroy them right away. A new ship appeared on their sensors. This one was different from the others. It was smaller but clearly built for war. Weapons ports covered, its surface like the eyes of a spider. It moved toward them with deadly grace. "Captain," Hana said, That ship has enough firepower to turn us into space dust. Jinho thought quickly. The Baekdu was a mining ship, not a warship. Their only weapons were mining lasers meant for cutting through asteroids. Against a real military ship, they would not last 10 seconds in a fight. Open a channel, he told Sunho. The alien voice came through again, this time with video. The screen showed a creature that looked like a nightmare. It stood 3 meters tall and was covered in natural armor that looked like black metal. Its face was angular and sharp with glowing red eyes. Spikes grew from its shoulders and arms. Everything about it was designed to frighten and intimidate. I am Battlefleet Commander Thexanol of the Volani Empire, the creature said. Its voice was deep and menacing. You are trespassing in Imperial space. Surrender now or face destruction. Jinho stood up and straightened his simple work uniform. He was not dressed for making first contact with aliens, but he had learned long ago to work with what he had. I am Captain Jinho of the mining vessel Baekdu, he said calmly. We are here by accident. A solar storm threw off our navigation during a quantum jump. We did not mean to enter your space. The alien commander's eyes narrowed. It was clearly expecting fear, begging, or some kind of submission. Instead, it got a polite explanation from a man who sounded like he was discussing a minor shipping delay. Accident or not, you are here now, Thexanol said. Primitive species who enter our space have only 2 choices: surrender and serve the Empire or die. Choose quickly. Doyen leaned over to Jinho and spoke quietly. Captain, this creature is blocking our path back to the jump point. We need to get past it to calculate our way home. Jinho nodded. He looked back at the screen where the alien commander waited for an answer. The creature's armor and weapons were impressive, but Jinho had seen impressive things before. He had worked in the asteroid belts where a single mistake could kill everyone on the ship. He had dealt with corporate executives who thought they were the most important people in the universe. This alien was just another problem to solve. Commander Thexanol, Jinho said. We appreciate your concern about your borders. We have no desire to cause trouble. We just need to calculate our jump coordinates and head home. If you could give us some space to work, we will be out of your territory in about 12 hours. The alien commander stared at him, its mouth opened slightly, showing rows of sharp teeth. Around the bridge, other crew members went about their work as if having a conversation with a terrifying alien was just another part of their day. Dr. Kyung, the ship's xenobiologist, had arrived on the bridge and was studying the alien with professional interest. She pulled out her tablet and started taking notes. Fascinating bone structure, she said to herself. The armor appears to be natural, not artificial. And those spikes, are they for display or combat? She looked up at the screen. Commander Thexanol, would you mind if I asked a few questions about your biology? This is an amazing opportunity for scientific study. The alien commander's expression changed from menacing to confused. It looked like it was trying to process something it had never encountered before. Chef Taehyun chose that moment to arrive on the bridge with coffee and sandwiches for the crew. He glanced at the screen, saw the alien, and nodded politely. Hello there, he said cheerfully. You look hungry. Would you like to try some human food? I make excellent kimchi. The alien commander's jaw actually dropped open. It had conquered dozens of species across the galaxy. Each time, the reaction was the same: fear, terror, desperate begging for mercy. Never had anyone offered it food. Hana was running security scans on the alien ship, treating it like any other vessel that might dock with them. Their energy shields are impressive, she said to Doyun. Better efficiency than our designs. I wonder how they generate that much power without overheating. Sunho was already working on setting up translation protocols for future conversations. Their language has some interesting grammatical structures, he told Dr. Kyung. Very complex verb forms. Probably indicates a highly hierarchical society. The alien commander watched in growing bewilderment as the humans went about their business. Where was the fear? Where was the panic? Where was the desperate attempt to flee or fight? Do you not understand the situation? Thexanol finally asked. This is the Volani Empire. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. Our fleets span the galaxy. You should be trembling in terror. Jinho looked thoughtful. That sounds like quite an achievement. How do you manage the logistics of governing that many worlds? The communication delays alone must be a nightmare. Behind him, Yuna had gone back to her calculations. The alien threat was concerning, but she still had a job to do. The crew needed to get home, and that meant figuring out the exact coordinates for their jump. Mining supervisor Jaewon arrived to give his shift report. He saw the alien on the screen and paused. New clients? He asked Jinho. Possibly, Jinho replied. They seem to own this sector of space. Jaewon studied the alien commander, with the eye of a man who had dealt with difficult customers before. Well, 2 hours after the first contact, the space around the Baekdu looked very different. What had been empty void was now filled with alien ships. They came in all sizes, from small fighters to massive battleships. Each one looked like it was designed to terrify anyone who saw it. Dark metal hulls covered in spikes and weapon ports created a sight that had made countless species surrender without a fight. Captain Jinho stood on the bridge, drinking coffee and watching the alien fleet grow larger. Yuna was still working on the navigation calculations at her station. The quantum jump had been more complex than she first thought, and getting the coordinates exactly right would take time. Captain, Sunho said from his communication station, we are getting a new transmission. This one is different, much more formal. The main screen activated to show a new alien. This one was even larger than Commander Thexanol, with more elaborate armor and additional spikes along its arms and shoulders. Ancient scars covered its face and its red eyes burned with the confidence of someone who had never been defeated. I am Admiral Korvex of the Volani Imperial Fleet, the creature announced. Its voice was deeper and more commanding than the first alien. I bring with me 10,000 ships of war. You are completely surrounded and hopelessly outnumbered. Behind the Admiral, other aliens could be seen moving around what looked like a massive command bridge. The technology was impressive. Holographic displays showed star maps and tactical information. Everything was designed to show power and authority. This is your final opportunity, Admiral Korvex continued. Submit to the Volani Empire and serve as slaves, or be destroyed. You have one standard time unit to decide. Jinho looked at his watch. How long is a standard time unit? He asked Sunho. Sunho checked his translation programs. About 47 minutes, Captain. That should be enough time, Jinho said. He pressed the communication button. Admiral Korvex, thank you for the formal introduction. We appreciate you taking the time to visit us personally. However, we are currently in the middle of shift change, and our union representative insists that all crew members get their proper rest periods before any major meetings. The Admiral's expression went blank. In 3,000 years of conquest, no one had ever mentioned shift changes or union representatives to him. From across the bridge, Minji spoke up. She was the crew's union representative, a small woman with a big voice who made sure everyone followed proper safety protocols and work schedules. Captain is right, she said firmly. The third shift needs their 8 hours of sleep. We cannot have productive negotiations with tired people. It is not safe and it is not fair to the workers. She walked over to the communication station and looked directly at the alien admiral. We can schedule a meeting for tomorrow morning, at 9 o'clock ship time. That will give everyone proper rest and time to prepare. Please have your people send us an agenda ahead of time so we can review the topics you want to discuss. Admiral Korvex stared at the small human woman who was giving him instructions like he was some kind of middle manager. His mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. Dr. Kyung had been studying the alien ships through the ship's sensors. She approached the communication station with her tablet full of notes and questions. Admiral, I hope you do not mind, but I have been analyzing your fleet composition and biological data from our sensors. This is an incredible opportunity for xenobiological research. I have never seen such diverse ship designs. Do different Volani subspecies use different architectural styles? She showed her tablet to the screen, where complex charts and graphs displayed her analysis. Also, your bone density appears to be much higher than human normal. Does this indicate a high-gravity homeworld? And the bioluminescent patterns on your armor, are those for communication or just decoration? The Admiral looked at the charts showing detailed analysis of his own biology. No conquered species had ever studied him before. They were usually too busy begging for their lives. These questions are not relevant to your surrender, he managed to say. Oh, we are not surrendering, Dr. Kyung said cheerfully. We are just passing through. But since we are here, we might as well learn something. Science never takes a vacation. Chef Taehyun arrived with a cart of food for the bridge crew. The aroma of Korean cooking filled the air, spicy kimchi, grilled meat, and fresh rice. He glanced at the screen showing the alien admiral. You know, he said thoughtfully, you look like you could use a good meal. All that armor must be heavy to carry around. I bet your people burn a lot of calories. Would you like me to prepare something? I can make it mild if spicy food bothers your species. He started describing various dishes while the Admiral watched in growing confusion. Kimchi is fermented vegetables, very good for digestion. Bulgogi is marinated beef with a sweet sauce, very popular back home. And this soup has ingredients that boost the immune system. Admiral Korvex was starting to look genuinely upset. His carefully planned intimidation was falling apart. These humans were supposed to be cowering in terror, not offering him lunch, and asking about his bone density. Botanist Somin arrived on the bridge carrying a small potted plant. She was responsible for the ship's hydroponics gardens that provided fresh food during long mining missions. She looked at the alien fleet on the screen with interest. Those ships are huge, she said to Jinho. They must have amazing agricultural systems to feed all those crews. I wonder what kind of plants they grow. Do you think they would be interested in trading seeds? Some of our earth plants might grow well in their environment. She held up her plant, a small flowering specimen from the ship's garden. This is a hybrid tomato that grows well in low light. Very nutritious and easy to maintain. It might be perfect for long space voyages. The Admiral was beginning to make choking sounds. Somewhere in his mind, a small voice was screaming that this was not how galactic conquest was supposed to work. Mining Supervisor Jaewon had finished his shift and came to see what all the excitement was about. He studied the alien fleet with the practiced eye of someone who had spent his life evaluating industrial operations. Those are some serious ships, he said admiringly. The resource requirements to build a fleet that size must be enormous. Where do you get your raw materials? Do you do your own mining or contract it out? He pointed at one of the larger vessels. That battleship there, I bet it has more metal in it than our entire home mining station. The logistics of building something that big in space must be incredibly complex. Admiral Korvex was starting to understand that something was very wrong with these humans. They should be terrified. They should be begging for mercy. Instead, they were treating his mighty war fleet like a fascinating industrial project. We do not discuss our military capabilities with prisoners, he said weakly. Oh, we are not prisoners, Jaewon replied. We are just curious about your operation. In the mining business, you learn to appreciate good engineering when you see. Pilot Yunbi had been studying the alien ship's engine signatures on the sensor displays. She approached the communication station with obvious excitement. Admiral, your ship's propulsion systems are amazing. The energy output readings are off the charts. What kind of fuel do you use? And how do you solve the heat dispersion problem? With engines that powerful? She pulled up technical displays showing engine efficiency calculations. Our best ships back home can barely manage half the acceleration your fighters are showing. There has to be some kind of revolutionary engine. Design involved. Our technology is superior to yours, yes, the Admiral said, unsure where this conversation was going. Would it be possible to examine one of your engines up close? Yunbi asked hopefully. Not to copy it or anything, just to understand the principles. I am always trying to learn new things about propulsion systems. The Admiral looked around his own command bridge where his officers were staring at him with confusion. This was supposed to be a simple intimidation, followed by either surrender or destruction. No one had prepared him for humans who wanted to examine his engines and trade vegetables. Maintenance Chief Sung-hoon had been listening to the conversation, while reviewing damage reports from their rough quantum jump. He looked up from his tablet with a thoughtful expression. Admiral, I could not help but notice some of your ships have scorch marks around the engine ports. That usually means the heat shielding is not quite adequate for the power output. We have developed some new ceramic composites that might help with that problem. He showed his tablet screen with technical specifications. These materials can handle much higher temperatures without degrading. We use them on our mining lasers. If you are interested, I could send over the specifications. The Admiral was starting to make sounds that were not quite words. His officers were looking at each other with expressions of complete bewilderment. In their long military careers, they had never encountered anything like this. Dr. Kyung had been taking more notes and measurements. She looked up from her work with new questions. Admiral, I have been analyzing the crew visible on your bridge. You appear to have at least 3 different subspecies working together. This suggests a highly complex social structure. How do you manage interspecies coordination in military operations? She paused, then continued with genuine curiosity. In the capital city of the Volani Empire, on a planet that had been turned into one massive fortress, Emperor Zarmoth received the most disturbing report of his 3,000-year reign. The throne room was vast and dark, designed to make visitors feel small and powerless. Statues of conquered enemies lined the walls, and the floor was made from the bones of creatures that had dared to resist the Empire. The Emperor himself was ancient beyond measure, kept alive by technology that was older than most civilizations. His armor was forged from metals taken from 100 different worlds, and his crown was made from the crystallized fear of his enemies. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Tell me again about these humans," he commanded. Admiral Korvex stood before the throne, still shaken from his encounter with the mining crew. His report had traveled faster than light across the galaxy, carrying news that made no sense to anyone. Who heard it? "Your Imperial Majesty, they show no fear." "None at all. We surrounded them with 10,000 ships, showed them our weapons, threatened them with destruction, and they asked if we wanted to try their food." The Emperor's glowing red eyes narrowed. "Are they using some kind of psychological warfare? Technology?" "We scanned them thoroughly, Majesty. No advanced technology beyond basic space travel. No weapons except mining tools. No shields except standard navigation deflectors. They are completely defenseless." "Then they must be hiding there. True military power," the Emperor decided. "Send spy ships to investigate their home territory. Find their war fleets, their weapons factories, their military command centers." 3 days later, the spy ships returned with data that made the situation even more confusing. The reports showed a species that had barely begun to explore space. They had only a few dozen colonies, mostly mining operations and research stations. Their military consisted of small patrol ships designed to deal with pirates and asteroids, not galactic warfare. "This makes no sense," General Vextar said as he reviewed the intelligence data. "According to these scans, the humans have no significant military power. Their entire space navy could not defeat a single one of our battleships." The Emperor studied holographic displays showing human cities, ships, and colonies. Everything looked primitive compared to Volani technology, but something about the humans themselves was deeply unsettling. "Look at this," Intelligence Director Moxun said, pointing to video feeds from human colonies. "They live and work in conditions that would kill most species. High radiation, extreme temperatures, toxic atmospheres, and they seem to enjoy it." The video showed human miners working in asteroid belts where a single mistake would mean instant death. They showed colonists building cities on planets with deadly storms and poisonous air. They showed children playing games that involved simulating disasters and fighting imaginary monsters. "They treat danger like entertainment," Moxun continued. "Their popular fiction consists of stories about surviving impossible situations, fighting overwhelming odds, and never giving up no matter how hopeless things become." The Emperor was beginning to understand why his forces had failed to intimidate the humans. A species that considered mortal danger to be fun would not be impressed by threats of destruction. "What about their social structure?" he asked. "Chaotic," General Vextar replied. "They have no clear submission hierarchy. They argue with their leaders, question orders, and make decisions by voting. Their ship captains must negotiate with something called a union representative before making major decisions. The Emperor had ruled through absolute authority for millennia. The idea of having to negotiate with subordinates was completely alien to him. Meanwhile, back at the human ship, the situation was getting stranger by the hour. The Volani had decided to try psychological warfare, hoping to break the humans' mysterious confidence. They brought in their most feared specialist, Commander Nextra of the Mindbreaker Division. Nextra belonged to a species that fed on fear and terror. Her natural abilities allowed her to read thoughts and project nightmarish visions directly into the minds of her enemies. She had broken the will of entire civilizations without firing a single shot. "Humans," she announced over the communication channel, "you will now experience true terror. I will show you visions of your inevitable doom, of the destruction of your homeworld, of the complete annihilation of your species." She reached out with her mental powers, expecting to find the usual landscape of fear and worry that existed in every sentient mind. Instead, she found something completely unexpected. The humans' minds were full of stress and anxiety, but not about the alien fleet threatening them. They were worried about missing delivery deadlines, paying bills, and whether they had remembered to turn off the coffee maker before leaving Earth. Their concerns were completely mundane and practical. When she tried to project visions of destruction and death, the humans' minds automatically began analyzing them. Dr. Kyung was fascinated by the alien psychological attack and started taking mental notes about telepathic species. Pilot Yunbi wondered if the scary visions were some kind of advanced holographic technology she could learn about. "This is not working," Nextra reported to Admiral Corvex. "Their minds are strange. They seem to expect terrible things to happen as a normal part of life." She tried harder, projecting images of their ship being destroyed, their friends dying, their homes burning. But the humans just absorbed these visions and started problem-solving. How could they improve their emergency procedures? What backup plans did they need? How could they contact their families to warn them about potential alien threats? "They are turning my psychological attacks into safety training exercises," Nextra said in bewilderment. Captain Jinho noticed that something was trying to get into his mind, but he treated it like any other work distraction. He had learned long ago to focus on the task at hand and not let worry interfere with doing his job. "Is everything all right, Captain?" Yuna asked. She had finished the navigation calculations and was ready to program their jump home. "Something is trying to give me bad dreams while I'm awake," Jinho replied. "But we have work to do." Dr. Kyung approached him with obvious excitement. "Captain, I think one of the aliens is attempting some kind of telepathic contact. This is amazing. Would it be possible to set up a controlled experiment? I would love to study how their mental abilities work." She pulled out her tablet and started making notes. "If I could get some volunteers from the crew, we could test the range and effectiveness of their telepathic powers. This could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness and neural communication." Commander Nextra was starting to panic. Her mental attacks were not only failing, they were being studied. She tried to withdraw from the humans' minds, but Dr. Kyung was somehow following her mental probe back to its source. "Fascinating," Dr. Kyung said out loud. "The telepathic connection seems to work both ways. I can sense the alien's confusion and fear. Her species appears to be naturally empathic, which would explain why our lack of fear is so disturbing to them." Nextra broke the connection completely and fled back to her own ship, leaving the humans alone. "That was interesting," Dr. Kyung told Jinho. "I think we accidentally scared their psychological warfare specialist." The news of this failure spread quickly through the alien fleet. The Mindbreakers were legendary throughout the galaxy. If they could not break human morale, what could? Admiral Corvex was running out of options. He had tried intimidation, threats, and psychological warfare. Nothing worked. The humans continued to treat his mighty fleet like a minor inconvenience, while they went about their normal work routine. In desperation, he decided to show them recordings of the Empire's greatest conquests. Surely seeing the fate of other species would make the humans understand their hopeless situation. "Humans," he announced over the communication channel, "you will now witness the power of the Volani Empire. Watch and despair." The main screen, filled with images of massive space battles, planets being destroyed and entire civilizations being enslaved. The recordings showed the Empire's war machine in all its terrible glory. Fleets that blotted out the stars, weapons that could crack, worlds in half, and the broken remains of those who had dared to resist. The human crew gathered around the screen to watch. But their reactions were not what the Admiral expected. Historian Wu Jin pulled out his tablet and started taking notes. "This is incredible historical documentation," he said. "The tactical evolution of space warfare, the development of planetary siege techniques, the logistics of governing multiple star systems. This is a treasure trove of information." He looked up at the screen where Admiral Korvex was waiting for screams of terror. "Admiral, would it be possible to get copies of these recordings for academic study? And could you provide historical context for each battle? I am working on my doctoral thesis about the rise and fall of galactic civilizations." Physicist Da Hyun was studying the planet-killing weapons with professional interest. "The energy calculations for those antimatter warheads are fascinating," she told Dr. Kyung. "Look at the containment field stability during the detonation sequence. They have solved some major engineering problems that our scientists are still working on." She turned to the communication screen. "Admiral, could you provide technical special? Word about the fearless humans spread through the galaxy faster than the speed of light. On conquered worlds across the Empire, beings who had lived in terror for generations began to whisper among themselves. The stories seemed impossible, but they came from official Imperial communications, which made them harder to dismiss. On the mining world of Kepler-7, where the Zephyrian people had labored as slaves for 200 years, an old worker named Theklos shared the news with his fellow miners. "They say a species called humans entered Imperial space and did not surrender," he whispered as they worked in the deep tunnels. "They say these humans asked the Imperial fleet if they wanted to buy mining services." His friend Velnara looked around nervously before responding. "That cannot be true. No one refuses the Empire. No one survives refusing the Empire." "But what if it is true?" Teklos asked. "What if there really are beings who do not fear the Volani?" Similar conversations were happening on 1,000 worlds. The Empire had built its power on the certainty that resistance was hopeless. But if some unknown species could face the Imperial fleet without trembling, maybe the Empire was not as invincible as everyone believed. On the agricultural world of Demeter 5, where the peaceful Verdani had been forced to grow food for Imperial troops, farmers began to work a little slower. They started making small mistakes that reduced crop yields. Nothing that could be called sabotage, just the kind of accidents that happen when people are not quite as careful as they used to be. On the factory world of Hephaestus 3, where the mechanoid people built ships for the Imperial fleet, production schedules started slipping. Workers called in sick more often. Machines broke down and took longer to repair. Quality control found more defects that required time-consuming fixes. The changes were small and scattered, but they added up. Across the Empire, the machinery of oppression that had run smoothly for millennia began to develop tiny problems. Meanwhile, the human mining crew continued their normal routine, completely unaware that they had started a galactic revolution, simply by being themselves. Captain Jinho was reviewing supply reports when Admiral Korvex contacted them again. "Humans," the Admiral announced. "The Emperor himself is coming to negotiate with you. This is an honor beyond measure. You should be grateful for this opportunity." Jinho looked up from his paperwork. "When will he arrive? We need to know so we can schedule our shifts properly. And will he need any special accommodations?" "Different. Atmosphere, specific temperature requirements, that sort of thing." The Admiral stared at him. You want to know about the Emperor's environmental needs?" "Of course," Jinho replied. "We want to be good hosts. It would be rude not to make sure our guests are comfortable." This was not the reaction Admiral Korvex had expected. The Emperor's arrival was supposed to terrify enemies into immediate submission. Instead, the humans were planning a hospitality schedule. "The Emperor does not require accommodations from inferior species," the Admiral said, stiffly. "Everyone requires basic environmental support," Dr. Kyung interjected. "Atmospheric pressure, temperature control, appropriate lighting. These are scientific necessities, not signs of weakness." She had been studying the biological data from their encounters with different Volani officers. Based on my analysis, your species prefers lower light levels and slightly higher humidity than humans. We can adjust the conference room settings to make the meeting more comfortable for everyone. The Admiral was beginning to understand why these humans were so disturbing. They treated everything, even meeting with the most powerful being in the galaxy, like a practical problem to be solved. 3 days later, the Emperor's personal flagship arrived. It was a ship so massive it had its own gravity, so heavily armed it could destroy star systems, and so magnificently terrifying that entire fleets had surrendered at the sight of it. The vessel was shaped like a colossal predator, with weapon ports that looked like glowing eyes and engine ports that resembled gaping mouths. Now that is impressive engineering, Pilot Yunbi said as she watched the ship maneuver into position. The power requirements for a ship that size must be incredible. How do they prevent the structure from collapsing under its own weight? Maintenance Chief Sung Hoon was studying the technical readouts with professional interest. Look at those stabilization systems, he said. They have managed to keep a ship the size of a small moon stable and maneuverable. The gyroscopic systems alone must be works of art. Engineer Hyejin was analyzing the energy signatures from the massive vessel. Their power distribution system is fascinating, she told Dr. Kyung. They are running what looks like controlled fusion reactions in dozens of separate reactors, but somehow managing to coordinate the output perfectly. She paused, then added thoughtfully, although I noticed some efficiency problems in their energy transfer systems. They are losing about 12% of their power to heat dissipation. We have developed some new superconducting materials that could help with that. The Emperor himself finally appeared on the communication screen. He was ancient and terrible, a being whose very presence had made entire civilizations bow down in worship. His armor was forged from the fears of his enemies, and his crown held the crystallized screams of the conquered. When he spoke, reality itself seemed to bend around his words. I am Zarmoth, Emperor of the Volani, conqueror of 1,000 worlds, master of the galaxy, he announced. You will kneel before me and beg for the honor of serving my empire. The human crew looked at him with the same polite attention they gave to any important visitor. Captain Jinho stood up and straightened his work uniform. Your Imperial Majesty, welcome aboard our ship. I am Captain Jinho. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us personally. That was very considerate of you. The Emperor waited for the humans to fall to their knees in terror and worship. Instead, they remained standing and looking at him with calm professional interest. We have prepared a conference room for our meeting, Jinho continued. Dr. Kyung has adjusted the environmental controls based on her analysis of Volani biology. We also have refreshments available if you would like them. Chef Taehyun appeared with a cart of carefully prepared food. I made some simple dishes that should be compatible with your digestive system, he explained. Nothing too spicy or exotic. I also prepared some herbal tea that might help with the stress of governing such a large empire. The Emperor stared at the offered refreshments. In 3,000 years of absolute rule, no one had ever offered him homemade snacks and stress relief tea. I do not eat food prepared by inferior species, he said automatically. That is perfectly understandable, Taehyun replied cheerfully. Food safety is very important, especially for important people like yourself. Would you prefer to bring your own food, or would you like me to prepare something while your staff supervises? The Emperor was starting to feel the same confusion that had afflicted all his subordinates. These humans were supposed to be cowering in terror, not offering to cook for him under supervision. Union Representative Minji stepped forward with a clipboard and pen. Your Majesty, before we begin formal negotiations, I need to review our safety protocols with you. Are you carrying any weapons or hazardous materials? Do you have any medical conditions we should be aware of? Are you allergic to any common substances? She spoke with the same firm authority she used when conducting safety briefings for new workers. I also need to inform you that this meeting is being recorded for quality assurance and training purposes. Do you consent to this recording? The Emperor's mouth opened and closed several times. He was being given a safety briefing by a small, human woman with a clipboard. Somehow his arrival as the supreme ruler of the galaxy had turned into a workplace orientation session. Consent? He managed to say. Excellent, Minji replied, making a note on her clipboard. Please follow standard safety procedures during your visit. No running in the corridors. Watch your head on low door frames and report any accidents or injuries to the medical staff immediately. Dr. Kyung had been taking notes throughout the conversation. She approached the Emperor with obvious scientific excitement. Your Majesty, I hope you do not mind, but I have been studying the biological data from our various encounters with your people. The evolutionary adaptations of your species are fascinating. The natural armor plating suggests a very dangerous homeworld environment. She showed her tablet to the Emperor, displaying complex biological charts and analysis. I have some questions about your species' development if you have time. How did the natural weapons evolve? Are they primarily for defense against predators, or do they serve other functions? The Emperor looked at the detailed scientific analysis of his own biology. The charts showed everything: his bone density, muscle structure, even estimates of his age based on cellular degradation patterns. You have been studying us? He asked weakly. Of course, Dr. Kyung replied. This is an incredible opportunity for xenobiological research. We have never encountered such a successful spacefaring species before. There is so much we can learn from you. She paused, then continued with academic enthusiasm. I am particularly interested in how your species managed to evolve such complex social hierarchies while maintaining the aggressive instincts necessary for survival on what mu. The conference room aboard the Baekdu had been transformed into something that had never existed before in the 3,000-year history of the Volani Empire, a place where the Emperor sat as an equal rather than a supreme ruler. The environmental controls had been adjusted to accommodate Volani biology, and the lighting was dimmed to comfortable levels for their species. Emperor Zarmoth sat across from Captain Jinho at a simple metal table. Between them lay charts, economic, projections and technical specifications that Trade Representative Changmin had prepared. The Emperor kept staring at the documents as if they were some kind of alien artifact he could not understand. These calculations, the Emperor said slowly, they show how partnership could benefit both our peoples. That is the idea, Jinho replied. Competition and conquest require enormous amounts of energy and resources. Cooperation is much more efficient. Dr. Kyung had set up her medical equipment in one corner of the room. With the Emperor's reluctant permission, she was conducting the first detailed scientific study of Volani biology ever attempted by another species. Your bone density is remarkable, she told the Emperor as she reviewed her scanner readings. Nearly 3 times human normal. Your homeworld must have had very high gravity. Yes, the Emperor replied absently, still studying the economic projections. Our world was harsh, only the strongest survived. That explains the natural armor and aggressive instincts, Dr. Kyung continued. But it also explains something else. Your species evolved to survive individual threats, but you have had to learn cooperation on a galactic scale. That must have created interesting psychological tensions. The Emperor looked up from the documents. What do you mean? Well, Dr. Kyung said thoughtfully, your biology makes you naturally suspicious and competitive, but running a galactic empire requires trust and delegation. You have to rely on subordinates you cannot directly control. That must be very stressful for your species. She was right, and the Emperor knew it. The constant need to maintain control through fear and intimidation was exhausting. He had not had a peaceful day in centuries. What do you suggest? He asked. Partnership reduces stress, Dr. Kyung explained. When people work together voluntarily, you do not have to spend energy forcing them to cooperate. They want to succeed because success benefits everyone. Chef Taehyun arrived with lunch for the negotiating teams. He had prepared a mix of human and Volani-compatible foods, carefully researched to avoid any ingredients that might be harmful to either species. I made some simple soups that should be easy for everyone to digest, he announced. Also some bread that works for both human and Volani digestive systems. The Emperor accepted a bowl of soup cautiously. It was the first time in his long life that he had eaten food prepared by someone who was not a Volani. The taste was strange, but not unpleasant, and the warmth was comforting. "This is good," he admitted. "Food brings people together," Taehyun said cheerfully. "Hard to stay enemies with someone when you are sharing a meal." While the leaders talked, the rest of the human crew continued their normal work routines. But their activities were being watched with fascination by Volani officers throughout the fleet. The aliens had never seen a society that functioned without strict hierarchies and constant supervision. Engineering Chief Doyen was teaching a group of Volani engineers about human maintenance techniques. "The key is preventive care," he explained. "If you fix small problems before they become big problems, your equipment lasts much longer." The Volani engineers took careful notes. Their own maintenance philosophy was based on using equipment until it broke, then replacing it. The human approach was more efficient, but it required trusting subordinates to make decisions without direct supervision. Pilot Yunbi had been given permission to examine one of the smaller Volani ships. She was amazed by the advanced technology, but noticed some practical problems. "Your engines are incredibly powerful," she told the ship's pilot, "but they are not very fuel efficient. You could get the same performance with about 30% less energy consumption if you adjusted the fuel mixture ratios." The Volani pilot was skeptical. "These engines were designed by our greatest engineers. How could a primitive species improve them?" "Sometimes an outside perspective helps," Yunbi replied. "We look at problems differently because we have different experiences." She showed him her calculations on a tablet. "It is not about being smarter or more advanced. It is about having different ideas and sharing them." The pilot studied her work with growing amazement. The modifications she suggested were simple but effective. More importantly, they made sense. Back in the conference room, the negotiations were reaching a critical point. The Emperor had reviewed all the partnership proposals and was struggling with a decision that could change the galaxy forever. "If I agree to this," he said slowly, "I would no longer be an absolute ruler. I would be a partner." "Is that so bad?" Jinho asked. The Emperor thought about the constant stress of maintaining an empire through fear, the endless rebellions that had to be crushed, the resources wasted on oppression instead of progress. "I do not know," he admitted. "I have never tried anything else." Union Representative Minji spoke up from her seat at the table. "Change is always scary," she said. "But sometimes the scariest thing is staying the same when you know it is not working." She had been quiet during most of the negotiations, but now she leaned forward with the confidence of someone who had spent her life fighting for workers' rights. "Your empire is falling apart," she continued. "We can see it in the reports. Production is down, rebellions are increasing, and your people are exhausted from maintaining control. You need to try something different." The Emperor started to object, then stopped. She was right. The intelligence reports had been getting worse for months. The human arrival had just accelerated problems that were already developing. "What do you propose?" he asked. "Start small," Minji suggested. "Pick one world, one system, and try the partnership approach. If it works, expand it. If it does not work, you can go back to the old way." It was a reasonable suggestion, but it required something the Emperor had never done, admitting that his way might not be the best way. Dr. Kyung had finished her biological analysis and was reviewing the results. "Your Majesty," she said, "I think I understand why our approach has been so disturbing to your people." She pulled up charts showing comparative brain scans. "Your species has a much larger fear response center than humans. What we experience as mild concern, you experience as terror. What we see as normal risk, you see as mortal danger." The Emperor studied the brain scans with growing understanding. "You are saying we are more afraid than you?" "Not more afraid," Dr. Kyung corrected. "Different afraid. Your species evolved to survive immediate physical threats. Ours evolved to survive long-term environmental challenges. We developed different responses to danger." She pointed to another chart. "Humans tend to respond to threats by problem-solving and adapting. Volani tend to respond by fighting or controlling the threat. Both approaches work. but they work better in different situations. And in space? The Emperor asked. Space is full of long-term challenges, Dr. Kyung replied. Radiation, resource scarcity, equipment failure, navigation errors. These problems are best solved through cooperation and innovation, not conquest and control. The Emperor was beginning to understand why the human approach to galactic exploration was so different from his own. Their species had evolved different survival strategies. Trade Representative Changmin spread out a new set of documents on the table. I have drafted a preliminary partnership agreement, he announced. It covers trade relationships, technology sharing, mutual defense, and joint exploration projects. The agreement was unlike anything that had ever existed in galactic politics. Instead of conquest and submission, it proposed cooperation and shared benefit. Instead of tribute and slavery, it suggested trade and education. This would mean the end of the empire as we know it, the Emperor said. Yes, Jinho agreed. It would mean the beginning of something better. The Emperor looked around the conference room at the humans who had accidentally changed his understanding of power. They had shown him that strength did not have to mean domination, that leadership did not require fear, and that cooperation could be more powerful than conquest. I need to consult with my advisors, he said finally. Of course, Jinho replied. Take all the time you need. 3 days later, the Emperor returned with his decision. The conference room was full this time. Human crew members, Volani officers, and representatives from several conquered species who had been brought in to witness the historic moment. I have ruled through fear for 3,000 years, the Emperor announced. It has brought order to the galaxy, but it has also brought suffering and waste. The humans have shown me a different way. He paused, looking around the room at faces both human and alien. I agree to the partnership. We will start with the Kepler system as a test case. If it succeeds, we will expand the program. The room erupted in surprised voices from various species. Volani officers whispered among themselves in shock. Representatives from conquered worlds stared in disbelief, but Captain Jinho just smiled and extended his hand. Welcome to the partnership, Emperor Zarmoth. The Emperor looked at the offered